is having to be redacted like a giant zebra crossing on every page. But everyone somehow knows what's there under the black lines. And what's there is that the person most exposed next to Bill Clinton, but I would argue even more exposed than Bill Clinton, is Donald Trump himself. He must have known that this sewage would eventually come down the pipe when he ran for office. It's all a bit perplexing to me.
Well, he was sending mixed messages. I mean, he deployed all of his proxies. Dan Bongino stepping down as deputy director of the FBI because he's so embarrassed by this whole debacle. Kash Patel, the FBI director. Pam Bondi, all of the kind of paid pro-Trump influencers like libs of TikTok and all of these characters you see on Twitter X who got the fake Epstein Files Phase 2, which contained nothing new, to create the sense that this would only implicate the Democrats and the deep state. And they strung along low IQ voters in the MAGA base who believed that, you know, something would actually take place which would challenge power and would unravel this pedophile conspiracy.
Yeah, they did this while Trump was on Truth Social promising to build the FBI, the same organization that tried to destroy him through Russiagate, a big new beautiful building. And that is what a lot of people trusted. I'm sorry to say that the rhetoric might have sounded good, but the uniparty's in it together to cover up for each other. That's just the truth here. And whatever you think about these releases and who looks the worst, whether it's the Clintons, whether it's Trump was willing to bleed political capital for something like 11 months over this, and it had to be for a reason. And I think at the very least we're seeing what that reason is that the FBI, the deep state, the DOJ itself entertained the notion that Epstein was conducting a sex trafficking ring, and contrary to their memo to the public where they lied and said, hey, there's no evidence of that, even though these documents show they were openly talking about that, and not only talking about that, but entertaining the prospect that Epstein had at least 10 other co-conspirators, including potentially Les Wexner, who the FBI hasn't even interviewed. Yeah, the guy that gave Epstein millions and millions of dollars, including a $77 million mansion, the biggest private mansion in Manhattan, they haven't even questioned him about his role in any of this. And Kash Patel and Dan Bongino lied through their teeth in saying, hey, we saw the file, there's nothing else there. No intelligence connections to other countries, there's no blackmail evidence, there's no evidence of co-collaborators. Well, these documents show otherwise, regardless of what you think about the Clintons and Trump and otherwise. They are protecting vile criminals in this government. I think they come from all areas, and that's what we're seeing.
And then it turns out that, as we all knew, any of us who knew about Donald Trump's well-documented history, that it didn't necessarily expose Trump for sure, but it certainly implicated Donald Trump as a very close Epstein associate. And Donald Trump has said himself that he believes that these files are phony and that they threaten to hurt, in his words, some very good people, including himself, who he sees as the best person.
He even covered for Clinton a few days ago saying, oh, he doesn't like the fact that images of Clinton in a hot tub, I think it was with Ghislaine in that one, or else they blacked out the person who he was next to, obviously, because like 90% of the whole thing is blacked out. He covered for Clinton and said, I don't think it's good that these images of Clinton are getting out there, implying that, oh, Clinton's reputation might be tarnished. Again, they all cover for each other. Hillary and Bill Clinton were at his wedding. That despite the fact that he said, hey, if I'll be president, she'll be in jail. I'll lock her up. Yeah, that turned out to be bogus too. That should have been the first tell, by the way, that this wasn't about uprooting and undermining the deep state. Why? Because Trump is part of the deep state. He colludes with the deep state all the time. The deep state is running his government in conjunction with him and his guys involved in this cover-up. They're all in it together. It's a big club. We're not part of it. And that's what you get out of the Epstein cover-up. Not even Epstein scandal, it's just a cover-up.
And so we have this massive tranche of redactions, which could easily be unredacted by anyone watching this right now by simply copying and pasting the DOJ files into a Word document or into an email. And I don't know if this had anything to do with Elon Musk's Doge cutting contracts for Adobe at the Department of Justice, but they actually did do that. They cut millions of dollars of contracts for software that is used for redactions. And now the public can see what's in them, and you have this kind of smorgasbord of allegations, which are random allegations that may actually not be true about, sexual assault and pedophilia. You had a fake document, which was a letter from Epstein to Larry Nassar, the gymnastics coach who's in prison for life for sexually abusing young female gymnasts. And yet the Department of Justice couldn't even keep control of or vet those documents in advance, and now it's all just circulating.
That's a good thing, by the way, that so many of these documents that are unredactable are circulating, that you can copy and paste from the PDF files into a Word file. That's a good thing, and the interesting thing to me is it raises the question of whether some of this was intentional. Could it be because of a loss of Adobe, software suites on computers in the State Department, or I guess the DOJ and not the State Department? But really, at the same time, this would have required thousands of people to do it if it were some people whistleblowing and trying to allow people the ability to see this stuff for what it is. The actual text there that is being over-redacted, of course, because that's what the government always does. It always over-covers for itself. I don't know if you could do this with just a small cabal of whistleblowers if it's this many documents. I think some of the documents can't be unredacted, but the amount of the ones that are is very helpful to us actually looking into these things. And what we're seeing is that, again, the FBI lied to the public. They did entertain the notion of a sex trafficking ring conducted by Epstein with as many as 10 co-conspirators, some of which they haven't even investigated, like Les West. That's the truth.
In the kind of partisan ecosystem online, and a lot of people believe them. And then there are real things that I think are of significance, like we've learned that Jeffrey Epstein had more foreign passports under assumed names than we previously knew, which further suggests that he was some kind of intelligence asset. But none of this, the redactions themselves and the way that they could be easily unredacted, it perfectly encapsulates the shattering of Donald Trump's mystique as a president who was going to take on the deep state. And he's lost his luster among his own base, and this will have serious implications for the upcoming congressional midterms.
It sure will, and the fact that he didn't try to use his political capital, and it was immense as he stepped into office with high approval ratings, to, abolish the FBI and abolish the CIA when you have both houses of Congress, seems like a pipe dream. A lot of us knew better that he wouldn't do that, but it should have been clear from the jump. He wasn't actually trying to abolish the deep state and eliminate its atrocities and evils. He wanted to collude and collaborate with the deep state against the American citizenry, including a lot of his base that wanted this released in the first place, by the way.
Yeah, exactly the point I was about to turn to. Not only has Trump blown any possibility of establishing a political dynasty, his sons, his daughters, maybe even his son-in-law. I'm sure he had an idea of Trumpism after Trump. After all, we've got Blairism after Blair. Why should you get off lightly? But the possibility of the Republicans actually losing power, and then the Democrats, now reinvigorated, as you said, by the Venezuela affair, actually going from that, going for proper impeachment and removal from office. It's all turned very sour for Donald Trump, and that's beginning to be obvious with the viciousness at the base. When you've got, for example, Alex Jones, a launching unhinged attacks on his comrade, Candace Owens, you realize that it's all rattling down on the right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the last TPUSA AmFest was a disaster. Everybody was at each other's throats. Ben Shapiro was sort of he was holding the banner for the pro-Trump faction, which is now the Republican establishment, which essentially is the deep state. And he didn't mention Israel once in his speech, which I thought for his own objectives was an effective speech because Ben Shapiro didn't put forward any agenda of his own. He simply critiqued Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and those who are the critics of Trump who will no longer speak to them.
I took two things that I loved, dancing and dogs, and I made them into a successful business.
Yeah, that's why it was subterfuge. It was deceitful. It was an attempt to actually just cause dissension rather than represent what we know is Ben Shapiro's chief prerogative, and that is Israel first. He won't touch the actual critiques of Israel and the critiques of the Israel first attitude in the Trump administration. He wants to make it about people that are more popular than him, and they're all wrong. And let's bring it back to the neocons in this administration that are pervasive in it and its foreign policy influence, the Marco Rubios and Lindsey Grahams of the world that are steering the ship in Israel and Ukraine and regime change in Venezuela, and let's bomb Nigeria on Christmas, and let's, continue arms heading into Ukraine. Let's try to get a pardon for Netanyahu. Let's make excuses and actually support Huckabee when he meets with Jonathan Pollard, the convicted Israeli spy. That's what he's trying to support here. So I guess you can say that is genius and that it doesn't show Ben Shapiro for what he is, but this divide is over the Israel first mentality. That's just what it's over. It's not about conspiracy theories, as Ben Shapiro says. It's about Israel and Israel first, and the scandals that come from all of it.
Won't give them the time of day. Marjorie Taylor Greene was also a target of his attack, and who also have been critics of Israel and Trump's embrace of Netanyahu. And the tenor of Ben Shapiro's speech was extremely nasty, extremely angry. You could tell he was speaking on behalf of the Zionist donor class that has Trump by the short and curlies, and that they are getting desperate. And you can feel the same anger from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had just quit Congress because she was with Trump from the beginning. From the first time she erupted onto the national stage in an ad where she's holding an AR-15 assault rifle, running for Congress as the ultra MAGA congresswoman from Georgia. Now she's persona non grata in the White House. Tucker, I don't know if he'd be welcomed back into the White House at this point. Candace Owens, who is close friends with Charlie Kirk, is now hated by the TPUSA leadership in the Trump administration.
Yeah, they're trying to divide the real dissidents on the right from Trump and standing behind Trump to do that and say, hey, if you're against this, you're against Trump. And a lot of the people doing this, like Shapiro and Levin, were never Trumpers. They were on the record as being never Trumpers, but they've successfully steered Trump back in the neocon direction. Into the swamp, that's where they remain with the Israel first mentality. And his foreign policy is beholden to the neocon establishment now. So the goal for Ben Shapiro is to push those people out of there. You should be able to see this pretty easily.
And so this is symbolic of them sort of losing their base, the sense among so many of the early ultra MAGA influencers that they've been stabbed in the back and betrayed, and that Donald Trump is going to ultimately release a memoir entitled Mein Schwamp, because he has embraced the swamp.
There goes Max, man. Mein Schwamp. Yeah, that's what we're going to see.